She stood alone in the observation chamber, wrapped in the glow of the nebula outside. Her hands, glowing faintly with the strange, pulsing light, not from any human or alien tech known to either empire. Her eyes shimmered with the reflection of distant stars, but the energy that danced across her palms was older than stars, older than laws, older than war itself, born on the fringe of a world neither claimed by the ascendancy nor the spiral courts. She had no nation, no name, just the title whispered through starships and intercepted signals, the vessel of continuum, the one whose touch could stabilize wormholes, rewrite decay into growth, or silence entire fleets with a blink. They had found her by accident, or so they said. A rescue team, responding to a distress call from an abandoned shuttle, found her nestled between shattered crates and glowing ruins no older than 10 standard cycles, her hair woven from some bioluminescent thread, her voice not words, but symphonies that echoed in the minds of those nearby. And from the moment she was brought to the border station, everything changed. The spiral court sent emissaries in cloaks stitched from starlight, their skin translucent, their eyes deep pools of gravitational swirls. They called her the Dawn Catalyst, claiming she was born of their bloodline, a long-lost experiment to bind quantum time to flesh, and the ascendancy responded not with peace, but with decree, scanning her DNA, tracing threads of their own blood, and science in her form, naming her the heir of phase protocols, a legacy weapon thought lost with the fall of the Glee Sanctum. Both could not be right, but neither would let go, for she represented not only a child with power, but the end of stagnation, the death of borders, the rise of something terrifyingly new. Warships gathered like thunderheads on either side of the orbital zone, ascendancy dreadnoughts, gleaming with kinetic shields and rail halo cannons, spiral flotillas rippling with cloaked void sails, and psionic disruption fields. Both empires activated ceasefire accords, but the tension was thick enough to fracture time itself in the center above the blue-gray moon of Ari, till the child remained in orbit under the care of the Independent Council, who had no loyalty but to equilibrium. Yet even they began to fracture, diplomats arguing in whispers, science officers calling the readings false or divine or dangerous. And still she stood calm, her hands glowing more and more with each passing hour, as if feeding off the very conflict. They ran test after test, but every scan only produced more questions. Her biology, impossibly complex, both alien and human. And neither the spiral delegates tried to communicate through dreams, entering her stasis pod during sleep cycles, returning wide-eyed and changed, speaking of timelines collapsed, of futures rewritten, and the ascendancy responded with logic algorithms and predictions that showed empire after empire bending at the knee once the girl could be trained or controlled or integrated into artificial cores. But no one asked her what she wanted. She simply stood by the viewport, humming melodies that tugged at forgotten memories in everyone who passed her, as though she carried the childhood of the galaxy in her chest and was slowly remembering it note by note. It was on the 12th day when she finally opened her mouth, not to sing, not to hum, but to speak one word, one single word, that echoed across every listening device in the system. She said, "Peace," not in fear, in plea, but in command. And the ships paused, and the generals froze, and the diplomats stared, for no child speaks in tones that bend grav waves and halt fire sequences mid-launch. And then she lifted her hands, and the energy that had once pulsed like quiet breath now flared into a shape, not a weapon, but a tree of light, a living holograph that expanded into corridors and hallways and touched the walls with soft light. Every being felt something different when the tree bloomed. Some saw their home, some saw their lost ones, some saw the moment before pain changed them. And in that moment, no one could speak, not even the neural enhanced governors of the ascendancy, not even the songbound archmothers of the spiral. But still, the debate resumed hours later, in hushed tones, with tighter security and more desperation. Both empires saw the same truth. She had become something beyond leverage. She was rewriting quantum boundaries with her presence, folding decay into renewal, stabilizing old reactor cores just by passing near them, and worst of all, every AI matrix running long-term simulations now showed convergence. Every path led to her, every branch of time coiled around the child like vines around a singular root, and still she remained in the center of the station, holding her hands close, as if afraid of what they might do next. They arrived on the same breath of space, both claiming they had not coordinated, and yet their arrival echoed like prophecy. The spiral sent a woman named Sira Vel, wrapped in threads of harmonic crystal, eyes flickering with dormant suns, her skin marked with sigils of memory. And the ascendancy sent Commander Halden Graves, who bore no markings, but carried centuries of doctrine in his spine. They entered the chamber where the girl sat, now surrounded by growing vines of energy curling from her hands into the walls, making flowers bloom from steel and silence from alarms. They stood across from one another, not with courtesy, but with recognition of inevitable opposition, and then turned their attention to her. Sira spoke first, calling her child a vision, saying she had every right to come home, that her bloodline would cradle her, not chain her, and Graves responded with logic, saying she was a citizen by genetic match, and the protection of the ascendancy could not be denied. Both tried soft words and patient tones, but their auras glimmered with fear, for they knew if she rejected both she might unmake them without meaning to. And as the girl looked up, the light in her hands pulsed a new color, something neither had seen before. Not red, not blue, war, not peace. And she simply stood between them, took each of their hands and smiled as the light spread from her palms into theirs, linking them in ways that bypass speech, bypass thought, reached straight into the core of species memory, and whispered one sentence into both minds: I was never yours to keep. The empires panicked, not in speeches or grand gestures, but in silent escalation. Small ships, powered weapons, AI subroutines, prepared contingency strikes. The council tried to block transmissions, but nothing could stop fear. Once it rooted and from orbit, it looked like preparation for annihilation, for neither side could allow her to choose the other, and she had chosen neither. And so each believed she had chosen the other, but she had not chosen. She had revealed, and that was worse, for now they knew they could not control her, only follow or be swept away. On the surface of the moon beneath the station, energy began to rise, forming concentric rings of gravitational inversion. The girl stood at the center, her hands raised, not in warning, but welcome, as if calling to something old and waiting, and beneath the crust a pulse awakened, not mechanical, not biological, but something deeper, a structure buried beneath dust and time, now responding to her presence like a child calling to its mother. And the rings formed gates, and the gates revealed a shape vast and slow, a construct that matched nothing in either database. And still she sang. Empires called for extraction. Soldiers tried to move in, but found themselves unable to pass thresholds of light. Their weapons shorting their minds filled with images of possibilities lost and regained. The girl lifted her gaze and looked not at the soldiers, but at the stars, and she said, the continuum must choose, not the pieces, not the powers. And her voice folded into the walls, into the construct, into the very vacuum of space. And the station vanished, leaving only silence and that blooming tree of light drifting in orbit. Years passed, or moments. It was hard to measure after the continuum unfolded, for time moved differently around the construct, and only fragments of memory remained across the empires. Some claimed the girl had become a god, others that she had been a test sent by something older than their wars. Some whispered that she still walks in systems thought uninhabited, planting trees of light and healing broken machines with a touch. And there were those who followed, who turned their ships away from conquest and toward discovery, seeking the blooming trees and the remnants of the girl. Neither the ascendancy nor the spiral claimed victory, for neither had been destroyed, but both had been changed. Technologies once guarded, now shared, borders once defended, now blurred. And in every chamber of governance hung a single image, a child with glowing hands standing before a tree of light, and the caption not in any language, but encoded in gravitational harmonics that, when translated simply, read, "Remember the moment we were given a future, and chose not to own it, but to walk with it." And so, across the galaxy, the myth remains, not just of a girl, but of the choice she made, not to destroy, to belong, to ascend, but to awaken something buried in all who saw her. The question they could never silence: what future do you hold, and will you let it go?